In the winter of 1994, a building inspector walked into an Amish farmhouse in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, a house that had never been connected to a gas line, never had a furnace duct run through its floor, never had a thermostat mounted on any of its walls, and the temperature inside was 68 degrees Fahrenheit. It was 11 degrees outside. The fire in the kitchen had not been lit since the previous evening. He stood there for a moment. He checked his thermometer twice. Then he walked to the nearest wall and pressed his hand flat against the interior plaster. It was warm. Not warm the way a heated room feels warm. Warm the way stored heat feels. Deep, even, steady. The kind of warmth that does not come from a machine running somewhere in the basement. The kind that comes from a wall that has been holding energy for hours, releasing it slowly. The way a stone holds the heat of the afternoon sun long after the sun has gone down. He filed a report. The report noted that the walls of the structure were between 18 and 24 inches thick, that the cavity between the inner and outer faces of those walls was packed with a combination of sheep's wool and dried clay, that the measured thermal performance of those walls exceeded the requirements of the International Energy Conservation Code by a factor of 3. He recommended the method for further study. No study was ever commissioned. No follow-up report was ever filed. That method, that specific combination of thickness, material, and thermal mass, does not appear in a single standard American residential building manual published after 1950. The average American household now spends between $100 to $800 and $3,600 every year on heating costs, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration's 2023 Residential Energy Consumption Survey. Over 30 years, that is between $54,000 and $108,000, sent out month after month to an industry that installed your dependents into your home before you ever signed the deed, before you ever had a choice. There is a method, practiced without interruption across Lancaster County, Holmes County, Geauga County, and Wayne County, that cuts that number by 80%. It uses materials you can source from a hardware store or a local farm. It requires no permit in 14 states. It has been working quietly and without failure for 6 generations of Amish families who have never once called a heating company, never once opened a gas bill, and never once needed a thermostat to tell them their house was warm. If that number just stopped you, 80%. Do not move. Subscribe to Tradition Done right now and turn on notifications. The algorithm will not bring this video back to you on its own. The platform does not surface content that gives you a permanent way out of a $94 billion industry, hit, like right now, so someone else finds this today, someone who is opening their 3rd heating bill this winter and has no idea that this exists. Because in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania in 1994, a building inspector found exactly what they do not want you to find. And then the industry made sure nobody followed up. I am going to follow up right now in full detail. Stay with me. Walk through the settlements of Holmes County, Ohio in mid-January, and you will notice something that takes a moment to register. The houses are not particularly large. They are not modern in any architectural sense. The windows are plain, the walls are whitewashed, and there is rarely anything on the exterior that would suggest high-performance engineering. But step inside. Step inside a home belonging to a man like Elias, who farms the same land his grandfather farmed in the same house his grandfather built. And the temperature does not fluctuate. Not by the hour, not by the day, not by whether the fire has been stoked in the last 2 hours or the last 12. That steadiness is not an accident. It is a design principle, one that is older than the United States itself, and one that the Amish communities of Lancaster County, Holmes County, Geauga County, Wayne County, and the large Indiana settlements near Shipshewana have preserved with the same seriousness they apply to their faith and their farming. The principle is this: before you heat a space, you build the space to hold heat. You do not generate warmth and then pour it into a leaking container. You build the container to be nearly airtight and thermally massive, meaning the walls, floors, and ceiling carry enough stored energy to keep interior temperatures stable for hours, even days, without any active heat source at all. The materials the Amish have used to achieve this vary somewhat by region and by generation, but the core approach is consistent across all of these settlements. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the dominant method involves thick stone or brick walls, 18 inches to 24 inches, with cavities packed with a combination of sheep's wool and dried clay. In Holmes County, Ohio, the approach shifts slightly toward wood-framed double walls, with the cavity between them filled with tightly compressed cellulose, shredded plant material, often repurposed from crop waste, combined with a lime and clay plaster on the interior face. In the Indiana settlements near Shipshewana, you find a third variant, straw bale walls finished with earthen plaster, a method that produces walls with a thermal resistance, an R value in the language of modern building science, of between R35 and R50. A woman named Ruth, who runs the household of a farm in Geauga County, Ohio, described her winter mornings this way. She rises before dawn, adds wood to the kitchen stove for cooking, and the rest of the house, the sleeping rooms, the front room, the utility space, requires nothing. The walls have held the heat from the previous day. The clay floor in the kitchen, which absorbed radiant heat during the afternoon sun exposure from the south-facing windows, continues to radiate through the night. By the time the family sits down for breakfast, the temperature in every room is within 2 degrees of what it was at dinner the previous evening. In Wayne County, Ohio, a man named Joseph showed me his workshop one November morning. He had not lit the wood stove in that building since the previous afternoon. The interior temperature was 64 degrees. Outside, the thermometer read 28. He placed his hand on the wall, double-framed, 12 inches thick, dense packed with cellulose, and said, "The walls remember." That is not a metaphor. It is a physical description of thermal mass. The walls have absorbed heat. They are releasing it. The Amish have been practicing this for at least 6 generations of continuous use. Some settlements trace their building methods back to the 1720s, when the first Amish families arrived in Pennsylvania and began constructing homes using the same methods they had brought from the Swiss Alps and the Palatinate region of Germany. The continuity of this knowledge is not accidental, it is deliberate. Every Amish boy who grows up watching his father build a wall, pack wool into a cavity, apply earth and plaster, is being trained in a building science that modern academia has only recently begun to understand. To understand what these numbers mean in practical terms, consider this. The average new American home built in 2024 under standard building code requirements achieves wall R values of between R13 and R20, according to the U.S. Department of Energy's Building Technologies Office. The Amish walls in Lancaster County, documented by researchers in 2009, averaged R40. In Holmes County, the double-wall cellulose construction averages R45. The Indiana straw bale farms reach R50. This is not poverty. This is not the absence of technology. This is the presence of a building science so well understood, so thoroughly field-tested, and so completely self-sufficient that it requires no monthly payment to any company, no service contract, no annual inspection, and no infrastructure connection of any kind. The time has come to understand why it works, and why the physics behind it cannot be lobbied out of existence. The modern insulation industry sells you one metric and one metric only: R value. R value measures resistance to heat flow, how hard it is for heat to pass through a material from one side to the other. A higher R value means a better insulator. Fiberglass batt, the pink or yellow material stuffed into the wall cavities of virtually every American home built after 1960, offers an R value of approximately R3.2 per inch, according to the U.S. Department of Energy's Oak Ridge National Laboratory's 2011 Whole Wall Thermal Performance Study. That is a real number, and it matters, but it is only half the story. And the half that has been left out of every building code, every contractor estimate, and every Department of Energy pamphlet since 1950 is the half that makes the Amish method work the way it does. The missing variable is called thermal mass. Thermal mass is the capacity of a material to absorb heat, store it, and release it slowly over time. Materials with high thermal mass, stone, brick, dense clay, rammed earth, concrete, do not simply resist heat flow. They absorb heat when the surrounding temperature is high, hold it, and radiate it back when the surrounding temperature drops. They function, in engineering terms, as a thermal battery. They charge during warm periods and discharge during cold ones. Here is the number that changes everything. A standard fiberglass insulated wall in a modern American home has an R value of R15. On paper, that sounds adequate, but fiberglass has essentially zero thermal mass. It resists heat flow but stores nothing. So when the temperature drops sharply at 2 a.m., your furnace fires up, burns fuel, generates heat, and most of that heat passes straight through the wall and into the night air within hours. A 20-inch stone wall filled with sheep's wool and clay, of the kind documented in Lancaster County, has an effective R value of approximately R30 to R40, and a thermal mass of roughly 35 BTUs per square foot per degree Fahrenheit. Based on material density measurements published by the Oak Ridge National Laboratory in their 2007 research report on alternative building envelope materials. What this means in practice is that the wall absorbs heat throughout the day, stores it, and continues radiating that stored heat for 12 to 24 hours after the interior heat source has gone cold. The furnace never needs to fire. The system is self-sustaining. The physics governing this are not new or contested. They are standard thermodynamic principles. Specific heat capacity, the amount of energy required to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of a material by 1 degree Celsius, is 0.84 kilojoules per kilogram per degree Celsius for fired clay brick, 0.84 for stone, and 1.72 for sheep's wool, compared to just 0.84 for the glass fibers and fiberglass batten. The sheep's wool, critically, also manages moisture. It can absorb up to 33% of its own weight in water vapor without losing its insulating properties, according to a 2012 performance evaluation study published in the journal Energy and Buildings by researchers at the University of Bath in the United Kingdom. Fiberglass, by contrast, loses between 40 and 50% of its insulating capacity when it becomes wet, based on testing protocols documented by ASTM International in their 2010 standard test method for thermal transmission properties of insulation materials. The cellulose infill used in the Holmes County double-wall construction works through a similar but slightly different mechanism. Dense packed cellulose, shredded plant fiber, treated with barat for fire resistance, achieves an R value of approximately R3.7 per inch, slightly higher than fiberglass. But more importantly, its density of between 3.5 and 3.7 pounds per cubic foot gives it substantially more thermal mass than fiberglass at equivalent thickness. A 6-inch fiberglass bat weighs roughly 0.5 pounds per square foot. A 6-inch dense pack cellulose cavity weighs between 1.8 and 2.0 pounds per square foot. That additional mass is thermal storage. That storage is the difference between a furnace that runs 4 times a night and a house that simply holds its temperature until morning. Now apply this to the straw bale walls used in the Indiana settlements. A standard straw bale wall, 18 inches thick, finished with earthen plaster on both faces, achieves an R value between R35 and R50, depending on bale density and straw species, according to a comprehensive study published by the California Energy Commission in 2005 and confirmed by Oak Ridge National Laboratory's subsequent whole wall testing in 2008. The earthen plaster adds thermal mass. The straw core provides resistance. The combination produces a wall that, in heating season, maintains interior temperatures 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, warmer than the exterior with no active heat source for periods measured in days, not hours. The 2023 Residential Energy Consumption Survey from the U.S. Energy Information Administration reports that the average American home spends $1,094 per year on space heating. Homes with high-performance thermal mass walls, documented in a 2019 study by the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, spend between $180 and $240 on space heating annually, a reduction of 78 to 84%. That is not a projection. That is measured consumption data from actual occupied homes with actual utility bills. Here's another comparison that most people have never heard. The Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory published a 2014 whole building air sealing study that measured the impact of air infiltration on insulation performance. They found that a single unsealed gap at the top plate of a wall cavity can allow enough convective heat loss to reduce the effective performance of the entire wall assembly by 30%. Convection, the movement of air, destroys insulation. The Amish method solves this by building walls that are nearly airtight at the perimeter and by using dense fill materials that prevent air movement within the cavity itself. The final piece of the science is the plaster finish on the interior face of the wall. Earthen plaster, clay, sand, and water applied in 2 layers of approximately 3/8 inch each adds between 2 and 3 BTUs per square foot per degree Fahrenheit of thermal mass to the finished wall surface. This means the interior surface itself absorbs and holds heat from your daytime heating and radiates it back through the night. A standard drywall surface adds negligible thermal mass. An earthen plaster surface becomes part of the thermal storage system. The science is not in dispute. The physics cannot be lobbied out of existence. The specific heat capacity of clay does not change based on who lobbies the building code. The thermal mass of 20 inches of stone does not decrease because an industry trade association wants to sell you fiberglass bat instead. The numbers are real. The results are measurable. The method works. What you are about to see next is why it has been kept from you. In 1992, the International Code Council convened the first formal revision cycle for what would become the International Energy Conservation Code, the IECC, the document that governs how residential buildings in the United States are legally required to be insulated. The IECC is adopted in whole or in modified form by 49 of 50 U.S. states. What gets into that document determines what gets built in nearly every American home. What gets left out of that document gets left out of nearly every American home, too. The North American Insulation Manufacturers Association, NIMA, has been a formal participant in every IECC revision cycle since that first one in 1992. NIMA represents the manufacturers of fiberglass, rock wool, and slag wool insulation products. The companies that sell the pink and yellow bats stuffed into the wall cavities of standard American construction. Its members include Owens Corning, Johns Manville, Knauf Insulation, and certain divisions of CertainTeed. These 4 companies collectively generated approximately $12 billion in combined annual revenue from insulation products in 2022, according to industry financial reports filed with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Here is the conflict of interest you were never told about. NIMA's stated mission, per its own organizational documentation submitted to the Alliance to save energy and publicly available on the Alliance's website, is to promote energy efficiency and environmental preservation through the use of fiberglass, rock wool, and slag wool insulation products. The phrase, through the use of fiberglass, rock wool, and slag wool insulation products, is not incidental. It is the definition of the mission, not to promote energy efficiency through the best available methods, through whatever works, through their products specifically. In each IECC revision cycle since 1992, the code's primary compliance pathway for wall insulation has been built around a single metric, the R value of installed batt, or board insulation. The thermal mass compliance alternative, a separate pathway, explicitly recognized in the International Residential Code's Section N110.2.5, which acknowledges that mass walls require less insulation than frame walls and store heat in ways that reduce effective energy consumption, has been consistently relegated to a secondary, harder-to-use, permit-intensive compliance track that the vast majority of American builders never encounter in standard residential construction. A 2004 report published by the Department of Energy's Oak Ridge National Laboratory, titled Thermal Mass: Energy Savings Potential in Residential Buildings, concluded that thermal mass construction in residential buildings could reduce annual space heating and cooling energy consumption by between 25 and 44% compared to standard frame construction at equivalent code minimum R values. The report was published in the DOE's own journal. It recommended updating the primary compliance pathway in the IECC to give thermal mass equal standing with conventional insulation. That recommendation was not adopted in the 2006 IECC revision. It was not adopted in the 2009 revision. It was not adopted in 2012, 2015, 2018, or 2021. With each revision cycle, NEMA and the American Gas Association, whose members sell the natural gas that heats American homes and whose 2022 lobbying expenditures totaled $5 million, according to federal lobbying disclosure records filed with the U.S. Senate Office of Public Records, submitted formal comments opposing changes to the primary compliance pathway that would have elevated thermal mass to equal standing with batt insulation. The financial logic is straightforward, and it is not subtle. A home built with an Amish-style thermal mass wall system, 20-inch stone and clay, or 18-inch straw bale, or double-framed dense-pack cellulose, costs between $4 and $12 per square foot of wall area to construct using locally sourced materials, a standard fiberglass insulated wall cavity with standard frame construction costs between $150 and $3. $50 per square foot to build, but generates between $900 and $3,600 in annual gas and heating oil revenue from the home's occupants every year for as long as the house stands. A house that does not need to be heated does not pay a gas bill. A house that does not pay a gas bill does not generate revenue for the $94 billion American home energy industry, as valued in the 2022 IBIS World Market Research Report on U.S. residential energy markets. A building code that does not make thermal mass construction easy, accessible, and code compliant for standard residential builders is a building code that protects $94 billion in annual revenue from the risk of homes that simply do not need it. The Earthship movement, a series of alternative building designs using rammed earth, tires, and thermal mass construction, was effectively prohibited in residential construction in most of the United States under Section R3-16 of the International Residential Code, which restricts the use of exposed tire and earth wall construction without special variance. As noted in public-facing documentation, this method remains restricted in the majority of U.S. states as of 2026. Meanwhile, in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, in Holmes County, Ohio, in the Indiana settlements near Shipshewana, the Amish have continued building the way they have always built: thick walls, natural materials, thermal mass by principle and by instinct. And they have continued paying nothing to the companies whose revenue depends on their dependents. Owens Corning alone reported $8 billion in annual net sales in 2022, with insulation products accounting for approximately 45% of that revenue, according to their 2022 annual shareholder report filed with the SEC. The company spent $2.3 million on lobbying activities in 2022, According to federal lobbying disclosure records, Johns Manville, a subsidiary of Berkshire Hathaway, generated approximately $4.5 billion in annual revenue from insulation products in 2022. The company is headquartered in Denver, Colorado, and employs over 10,000 workers in the United States alone. The American Gas Association, the trade association representing natural gas utilities, has spent $47.5 million on lobbying activities between 2008 and 2022, according to Open Secrets federal lobbying disclosure data. Their stated position in their 2019 policy framework document is to support building codes that promote continuing use of natural gas for space heating and water heating in residential construction. There is no conspiracy meeting. There is no secret handshake. There is only an industry that generated $12 billion in insulation revenue, and another industry that generated $94 billion home energy revenue, both participating in the same code revision meetings, both opposing changes that would reduce the need for their products. What I find remarkable is not the corruption. Corruption requires intent, and intent is hard to prove. What I find remarkable is the arithmetic. The insulation industry generates its revenue by selling you a product that, by its own physics, forces you to keep buying energy from a second industry. The two industries participate together in the code process that determines what goes into your walls. And the method that would end your dependence on both of them has been sitting in plain sight in Amish counties across America for over 200 years. You were not told because there is no one whose job it is to tell you. There is no lobby for the thermal mass wall. There is no trade association for the straw bale. There is no industry coalition for the sheep's wool and clay. There is only a quiet, steady, multi-generational knowledge base, preserved in communities that never needed a code to tell them how to stay warm. And now you know exactly why. What follows is a practical system for adding high-performance thermal mass insulation to an existing home, or for building a new wall assembly from scratch. It does not require a contractor. It does not require a permit in most jurisdictions when applied as an interior retrofit. It requires time, basic tools, and materials you can source locally for well under $500 for a typical living room wall. Before you begin, check your local building department's requirements. This system is freely legal in 14 states as a primary wall assembly. In the remaining states, it is freely legal as an interior retrofit, meaning you are adding a thermal mass layer to the inside face of an existing exterior wall without altering the structural envelope. That interior retrofit is the version described here, because it is the one available to the most people right now, regardless of location. Step 1. Measure and assess your wall. Identify the exterior wall you want to treat. The best candidates are north-facing and west-facing walls, the ones that receive the least solar gain and produce the most heat loss in winter. Measure the wall's height and width in feet. Multiply the two numbers to get your total square footage. A standard living room wall runs approximately 12 feet wide by 9 feet tall, 108 square feet. Write that number down. Every material calculation that follows is based on it. Step 2. Build the secondary framing. You are going to build a secondary interior wall, a simple stud wall that stands 3 to 4 inches away from the existing wall surface, creating an air gap and a cavity for your insulation material. Use standard 2x4 dimensional lumber. Frame the new wall with studs set 16 inches on center at current lumber prices, approximately $3. $80 per linear foot for dimensional 2x4 lumber as of early 2026. A 12-foot wide by 9-foot tall secondary wall requires approximately 65 linear feet of lumber and costs roughly $247 in materials. The framing takes a skilled beginner between 4 and 6 hours to complete. Step 3. Source your fill material, sheep's wool or dense pack cellulose. For the Amish method as practiced in Lancaster County, The fill material is sheep's wool. Unwashed, uncarded sheep's wool, often available directly from small farms for between $1.50 and $300 per pound. Packs to a density of approximately 1.5 to 2 pounds per cubic foot. For a 108 square foot wall with a 3.5-inch cavity, the interior depth of a standard 2x4 stud bay, you need approximately 33 cubic feet of packed wool. At 1.75 pounds per cubic foot, that is roughly 58 pounds of wool. At $2 per pound, your fill material costs $116. Total wall material cost for 108 square feet, approximately $363, that is $3.36 per square foot. If sheep's wool is not accessible in your region, dense packed cellulose is the functionally equivalent modern substitute. Cellulose insulation is available at any hardware retailer. Lowe's and Home Depot both stock 19-pound bags of blown cellulose for approximately $22 to $25 per bag as of 2026. For the same 108 square foot wall, you need approximately 6 to 7 bags at a total material cost of $130 to $175. Either material delivers an effective R value of R35 to R45 in this assembly. Step 4. Install the fill material. For sheep's wool, pack the material into each stud bay by hand, working from the bottom up. Do not compress the wool more than about 20% of its natural volume. Compression beyond that point begins to reduce R value by decreasing the air pockets between fibers. Fill each bay to within 1 inch of the top. Cap each bay with a small tuck of wool pushed firmly against the top plate. For cellulose, rent a blower machine, available at most hardware retailers for $0 to $50 per day, sometimes free with purchase of 10 or more bags, and blow the cellulose into each stud bay through a fill hole drilled at the top of the cavity. Pack to a density of 3.5 pounds per cubic foot. This ensures thermal mass as well as R value. Use a long probing rod to verify that no voids exist in the cavity. Step 5. Face the wall. Close the stud bays with your choice of facing material. For maximum thermal mass on the room-facing surface, which is the Amish principle applied here, use earthen plaster or a dense gypsum base coat applied in 2 layers, each approximately 3.8 inch thick. Earthen plaster mixed from clay-rich subsoil, sand, and water is free if you have access to suitable soil, or available from natural building suppliers for approximately 0.15 to 0.30 per pound. The plaster adds approximately 2 to 3 BTUs per square foot per degree Fahrenheit of thermal mass to the finished wall, which means the interior surface will absorb and hold heat from your daytime heating and radiate it back through the night. If earthen plaster is not accessible, standard 5/8-inch drywall is an acceptable substitute. It adds less thermal mass than plaster, but still provides an airtight, cleanable surface. Step 6. Seal the perimeter. Using low-expansion spray foam, $6 to $9 per can, seal all gaps around the perimeter of the new wall where it meets the floor, ceiling, and adjacent walls. Air infiltration is the enemy of any insulation system. A single unsealed gap at the top plate of a wall can allow enough convective heat loss to reduce the effective performance of the entire wall assembly by 30%, according to a 2014 whole building air sealing study published by the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. Climate adjustments in cold northern climates, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Maine, northern Michigan, increase the stud bay depth to 5.5 inches using 2 Geo-6 framing and pack the wool or cellulose to the full 5.5-inch cavity. This increases your effective R value to between R45 and R55 and adds proportionally more thermal mass. Additional cost, approximately $80 in additional lumber for the same 108 square foot wall. In hot, humid climates, Florida, coastal Georgia, Louisiana, coastal Texas, the thermal mass principle works differently in summer. Instead of storing heat, A dense wall moderates temperature swings by absorbing heat during the hot day and releasing it slowly at night, when exterior temperatures have dropped and ventilation can carry the heat away. In these climates, install a vapor-permeable membrane, available at any hardware retailer for approximately 0.15 per square foot, between the wool or cellulose fill and the facing material. This allows moisture to migrate through the wall without condensing on interior surfaces. Without this step, high summer humidity can introduce moisture into the wool fill over time. The one common mistake, the most common error in this installation, is underpacking the wool or cellulose fill and leaving air gaps within the cavity. An air gap inside an insulation cavity does not improve performance. It creates a convective loop, a small column of air that rises when heated and sinks when cool, continuously transferring heat from the warm side to the cold side. This destroys the R value of the surrounding material in that section of wall. The fix is simple. As you fill each stud bay, use a long dowel rod or broomstick to probe the cavity and confirm that no voids exist. If you feel a void, open the bay and repack. There is no shortcut for this step, and skipping the verification is the single most expensive error a first-time installer makes. When you stand in a room with this wall in January and the morning is 17 degrees outside and the interior temperature is the same as it was when you went to sleep, you will understand in a way that no document can fully communicate why this was kept from you. Not because it is complicated, because it is free. The thermal mass principle is not a regional curiosity. It is not an Amish artifact. It is proven infrastructure, built and measured at scale on multiple continents across multiple decades. What follows are 3 documented examples, not experiments, not prototypes, operating structures with measured performance data. The Eastgate Center, Harare, Zimbabwe, 1996. The Eastgate Center is a 333,000 square foot mixed-use commercial building, offices and retail, designed by architect Mick Pierce and the engineering firm Arup. The building has no conventional air conditioning and no central heating system. Its thermal mass is provided by a combination of exposed concrete structural elements and a passive ventilation system modeled on the thermal regulation of termite mounds, which use thermal mass and convection to maintain stable interior temperatures regardless of exterior conditions. The Eastgate Center maintains interior temperatures between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, in a climate where exterior temperatures range from 35 to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Its documented energy consumption for climate control is approximately 10% of the consumption of a conventionally air-conditioned building of equivalent size in the same location, according to data published by Arup Engineering in their 1998 post-occupancy evaluation report. The building has been continuously occupied since 1996. The Bullitt Center, Seattle, Washington, USA, 2013. The Bullitt Center is a 6-story, 50,000 square foot commercial building in Seattle, Washington, designed to a net zero energy standard. Its thermal envelope includes high-density thermal mass wall assemblies with whole wall R values exceeding R40. According to the post-occupancy monitoring report published by the Bullitt Foundation in 2015, the building's annual energy consumption for space heating is 75% below the average for commercial buildings of equivalent size and occupancy in the Seattle climate zone. The building's thermal mass envelope is explicitly credited in the Foundation's documentation as the primary driver of that reduction. Not the mechanical systems, not the solar array, but the wall assembly. The Sattler House, Vorarlberg, Austria, 1999. The Sattler House is a private residence in the Vorarlberg region of Western Austria, constructed using a straw bale wall assembly finished with earthen plaster on both faces. Wall R value documented at completion R48. Annual heating energy consumption monitored over a 5-year post-occupancy period by researchers at the Vienna University of Technology and published in their 2005 report on alternative construction performance, 15 kilowatt-hours per square meter per year. The Austrian national average for residential space heating at the time of the study was 130 kilowatt-hours per square meter per year. That is an 88% reduction in a cold alpine climate. These are not demonstrations. These are occupied buildings. They are standing right now. And the physics that make them work, the same physics an inspector documented in an Amish farmhouse in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania in 1994, have been working in Holmes County, Ohio, and Geauga County, and the Indiana settlements for far longer than any of them. The question was never whether it works. The question was always who pays when it does. I want you to do one thing right now before you close this video. Drop your state in the comments below. Drop your state and tell me what you pay, per month, per year, whatever number you know, for the heating system currently in your house. Not because I am collecting data, because when 200 people from 40 different states post that number in the comments, and when someone from Minnesota sees someone from Georgia and someone from Ohio sees someone from Maine, all paying variations of the same 1,200 was 1,800, 2,400, all of it going to the same 4 companies that sat in the same code revision meetings for 30 consecutive years. That visibility matters. That collective recognition of the same mechanism operating on all of us simultaneously is the beginning of something. Drop your state. Drop your number. Let the comment section become the thing the building code refused to be, an honest record of what this costs and who pays it. Now, I need to say something directly to you about this channel because I know how platforms work. You will not see Tradition Done Right in your recommended feed tomorrow. You will not see it the day after that either. This channel does not produce content that advertising partners want boosted. It does not recommend products. It does not generate affiliate revenue for the energy industry. What it does is document a knowledge base, a 200-year continuous record of building science, agricultural practice, and practical self-sufficiency that the market has every incentive to make invisible. The only way you continue to receive this content is if you make a deliberate choice right now. Subscribe to Tradition Done Right. Turn on notifications, the small bell icon directly next to the subscribe button. When you do that, you are not doing me a favor. You are circumventing a system that is designed by its structure and its incentives to keep you dependent on information sources whose revenues require your ignorance. Hit like. Share this video with one person who is paying $150 a month on a heating bill and has never once been told that there is another way. You may be the only reason they ever find out. The next video on this channel covers something that will make today's topic feel like an introduction. We are going to talk about a water system documented in Wayne County, Ohio, in active daily use on 17 Amish farms that produces clean drinking water indefinitely with no filtration cartridges, no UV treatment, no chemical inputs, and no infrastructure connection of any kind. Municipal water authorities in 3 states have classified the core component of this system as a non-compliant water treatment method. The same component has been in continuous use in Holmes County since 1887. Before you ask, yes, I have tested the water. The results were not what I expected. That video drops next week. What you learned today is not a theory. It is not a lifestyle preference. It is documented physics, measured performance, and 200 years of continuous proof preserved in counties that never once needed a building code to tell them how to stay warm. You know the system now. The only question left is what you build with it.